Hello my darlings and welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new here, my name is Miranda and I am the Enchantress of Avalon. So today's video is the first one of October. So happy October everyone. The happiest month of the year, you know. So as you can see from the title, today's video is discussing having a very vampire autumn and also embracing the vampire archetype and what that means in a more positive context. But yeah, we're just gonna go through some vampire goodness today, as I love vampires, always have, and yeah, we'll get into that. But first, I do like to begin by going through my little updates, what have you, at the beginning of the video. So as a reminder, I also own whiteroseofavalon.life, which is my website that houses the White Rose of Avalon online shop, where I provide metaphysical services and online classes. If you're interested in tarot readings, channeled readings, mentoring sessions, you can go ahead and click the link in the description box and check out my site and possibly order a reading or a mentoring session from me. And currently I'm ending out the final month of the first round of my 7-month-long online class, The Melusine Mysteries. That will reopen for enrollment in March. So if you want to keep a lookout, you can always check out the information on that. And I also have a Patreon run in conjunction with my business, and it's a fairy mystery community called Avalonian Rose Fairy Mysteries. The Patreon link is always in the description box below as well, with all of the different descriptions of the tiers and the offerings. And then finally, I just want to briefly note the two biggest changes and biggest announcements. Firstly, that I have partnered with the jewelry brand Otter Spirit. So I have a collaboration with them. My previous video was all about it. I will link that for you and you can go and check out the information on that. And then finally, this coming Sunday, this video is going live Monday. So in 6 days, I am vending at an event called Oktoberfest by Woodsy Witch, and it is at the Lackleback Sanctuary in Lake Ariel, Pennsylvania, if you're in the area. Check it out. I'll also have the Facebook event page for that and the times and location more specifically in the description box below for you. And now that all of that's out of the way, let's get on to the topic at hand. So, of course, most of us, the first thing we think of when we think of vampires is Dracula, which, yes, I am currently rereading, about a quarter of the way through. I wanted to reread this one this year because it's been a good 4 years since I've read the book. I've read Dracula many times and it's iconic, and rereading it this time has reminded me just how much I love the original source material. The way that Stoker wrote this was so well formatted. I do enjoy a good epistolary novel, which is a novel written in letters, diary entries, articles, and compiled together, as opposed to written in a straight narrative format. It's not for everyone, but I do genuinely enjoy it. It's very interesting because it's giving us so many different character point of views. So you're getting to know a little bit more about each of the characters and their own unique point of view and perspective. So that is nice. But it does sometimes mean that it's not as cohesive as a narrative written singularly in like third person, where you're describing what's going on with all these different characters, because it's all first person narrative. Or it's also might not be as cohesive as a purely first person narrative, and there are plenty of books in that. In fact, in the vampire genre, or subgenre that is, the Sookie Stackhouse novels are all written first person perspective, which is something that changes obviously when you actually have that become the TV show True Blood, because now you're getting the perspective of all of the characters, not just of Sookie in first person experiencing this. So I do actually recommend reading the books as well as watching the show if you really liked the show, and vice versa. If you liked the books, watch the show. I know a lot of people are harsh on the later seasons, but I have good fun with it. I don't care for how the show ended, but everything up until then is definitely good fun, and just enjoy the ride. I think the books ended a little better though, so if you didn't care for the final episode, you might actually like the way the book ended a little better. In any case, yeah, one of the best ways to embrace vampires in autumn is to read the original Dracula. Now, it is actually set in the spring and summer, but yeah, you're gonna get a lot of vampy goodness. I forget if it ends in the winter. It might end in the winter, but it starts in like the spring and summer. But yeah, iconic, great. I am a really big fan of these Barnes & Noble Classic Leatherbound editions, and the font is pretty nice in it too. They're easy to read, and they have the pretty bookmark and everything. Now, I want to go ahead and shift away from specific recommendations and talk about what I mean when I say the vampire archetype and embracing vampire energy. Now, we all know that there are, at least most of us in the spiritual sphere know of, energy vampires, psychic vampires. That is a thing. And that is something that can definitely be used negatively, especially if the person doesn't realize they're doing this, draining energy from others. It's often not malicious. It's often something a person absolutely cannot control. But if they do learn that they're doing this, they can learn to, mitigate it or to use it for harm. It just depends. But when I'm talking about embracing the vampire archetype, you can do this in a positive way. You don't have to seek to drain energy from others. And I'm not encouraging that. I am encouraging you to look to the vampire for inspiration to maybe bolster some confidence and provide some protection. Because the thing about vampires is they do have usually a great amount of confidence. They are intelligent, they are worldly, they are completely self-contained, and they're going to live their lives by their own terms. And we see this even when the vampire is the villain and is this monstrous being, which we have in like the original Dracula. He's very much monstrous. He's not meant to be sexy and lovable, but there's still an attraction to that, and that's an entirely different discussion. And I have discussed, there's old videos on this channel discussing why we love the villain and why we're attracted to dangerous characters and stuff. And I've also written about that on my website. You could search through the blog. There's so much. But the topic at hand for today is what the vampire archetype can do for us if we're embracing it. It can bolster our confidence because, if nothing else, a vampire is confident, and it could help provide protection. Vampires tend to be immortal, and they tend to be incredibly protective of themselves, and if they're in groups, maybe protective of others. So we can embrace this energy to have firm boundaries, to protect ourselves, and to bolster our confidence. If you're feeling like other people are maybe draining your confidence, maybe you are dealing with an actual energy vampire or a psychic vampire of some sort, and you're feeling kind of like the wilting violet, uncertain of yourself, tapping into that vampire energy and thinking, okay, what would the vampires do? Tapping into that archetype can help perk up that confidence. It could also perk up our own sexuality. Again, not in a negative way. You can use it as, oh, I'm going to embrace this vampire energy, this vampy energy, to feel more sexually alluring, to feel more confident in my sexual relationships if you don't feel confident in that way. It's because a vampire is alluring. There is the vampire glamour, compulsion. It's called different things in different vampire media, but it's this allure that a vampire has to enthrall people. That's sexy, that's seductive. And vampirism is inherently sexual. This is something that I've always talked a lot about when analyzing vampire media, and people who are like, oh, well, no, it should be more sanitized. No, the act of vampirism, traditional vampirism where there is biting and draining of blood, that is inherently sexual. The bite is penetration. The draining of blood is an exchange of bodily fluids. It's a sexual act. So vampires as metaphors for sexuality and for sexual repression are prominent for a reason, and that was done fantastically in last year's Nosferatu. This was my favorite film of last year. It is one of my favorite films of all time. Yes, I do actually prefer it to the originals. It's crazy because I grew up watching the silent film, and I have seen the 70s version many, many times. And I do love both of those films, but this one blew me out of the water, blew them out of the water because of just how atmospheric it is. Every single frame of this film is art, and I want to hang them on my wall. Like, it's gorgeously shot. And yes, I'm still a bit bitter that it did not win for the Oscar for cinematography because what? Did you watch it? But in any case, horror usually doesn't do very well at the Oscars, so I'm going to just let it be. But the performances are incredible. Again, visually stunning, and I was blown away by Lily Rose Depp's performance. I was just, wow. I'd only seen her in kind of lighthearted comedies, hadn't seen a lot of her work, but wow. the commitment by Bill Skarsgård in The Voice, taking those lessons to make that voice happen. Incredible. And of course, Willem Dafoe was always amazing. Nicholas Hoult was great. Everyone did a fantastic job in this movie. And you don't often see a film where you're like, every performance I thought was well done. So yeah, it's great. But it definitely, to the topic at hand, definitely does show that vampires as symbols for sexuality and of fighting sexual repression. And another thing that just, as someone who works closely with the Fae, and there are many vampiric types of Fae as well, so I do apologize if you just heard something. I paused because there was a motorcycle outside. I don't know if it picked up on the camera, but I apologize. In any case, there is references to fairy lore in this. There is references to Ellen thinking she is a changeling, like thinking that she was a changeling. That really hit home for me, first of all. And second of all, the use of the fairy star. Yes. And yeah, there's so much to be said about that, but I don't want to just talk about one movie this entire time, so we're just gonna move on. If you want a straight Dracula adaptation that isn't the Nosferatu version, my favorite has always been Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola version. I love this. And yes, I will admit, I love it for the love story. Yes, I'm going to eat up a love story between a human and a vampire, this forbidden love angle. I love it. And is it in the novel? No, not really. This just was like, we're going to add this in. And yes, it does take he is literally Vlad the Impaler approach, which is not in the original novel, but it's open to interpretation. All we know is he was, he was of nobility and of noble birth. And yes, he was associated with the Order of the Dracul, hence Dracula, but Stoker didn't ever say he was literally Vlad the Impaler. But it is open to interpretation, and we reinterpret things, and this is a perfect example of it. And it's a beautifully done example. And yes, I know a lot of people mock Keanu Reeves' performance. But first of all, Keanu Reeves is just lovable no matter what. Second of all, I think the kind of awkwardness you might see with him works for the film and works for the character. Jonathan Harker is awkward. He is out of place. And he's kind of boring. I've never been a Jonathan Harker fan. Love Mina, adore Lucy, and I will defend Lucy with my dying breath of people misinterpreting her as a character. And obviously, you know, Van Helsing's iconic. I love Dracula himself. Harker, I've never liked. So having someone play him and be a bit awkward, that's fine. Jonathan Harker is very much in the realm of Raoul from Phantom of the Opera for me. He's boring, he's annoying, I do not like him. So, you know, it's fine. And at least I like Keanu Reeves, so it makes him a little more fun. Same thing with Nicholas Hoult playing the Thomas Hutter character, who is the Jonathan Harker character in that film. Great actor, super likable, so it makes a character I don't normally care for a little more fun. Yeah. But yeah, there's so much you could do to embrace vampire energy by reading and watching media. So I brought some extra books to talk about. First off, I narrowed it down to just one of these types of collections. I actually have like 3 or 4 of them, but this is Vampires, the Myths, Legend, and Lore by Aubrey Sherman. And this serves as a really cute little introduction to vampires throughout different forms of media and throughout folklore. So vampires in literature is where I happen to turn to, so Stoker's right there. But it goes a little bit into everything. It even goes into modern literature. It goes into the idea of, you know, Vampire the Masquerade, that kind of D&D style, role-playing games, and all of these other things just across media. And yes, the other books I have are like really thick and chunky, going through everything, historical people who are accused of vampirism, what have you. Everything is in there. Again, don't know if you heard that motorcycle. I apologize. Anyway, but this one is really cute and it's great for a beginner because it's very short, but you can get other ones that are more encyclopedic and have just so much information. But that's good if you're like starting out in the folklore thing with it. If you want to deepen folklore, there's these 2 books. They are both by Montague Summers, who was a folklorist and also, I believe, a cleric. He was writing in mostly the 1920s, and he famously translated the Malleus Maleficarum, and his translation's not bad if you do want to read the Malleus Maleficarum, which I do recommend. Anyone in the magical sphere really should read it and see how people were talking about magic back in the day. It's really fascinating and horrifying. Seriously, more scary than most books you would read, just the way these people were talking about it. But these are his folkloric accounts on vampires. He also does have a book on werewolves, but we're not talking werewolves, so sticking to this. These are just the Dover print editions. Dover print is really affordable. I do highly recommend. But they did retitle them slightly from the original publications. They just call them Vampires and Vampirism and The Vampire and Lore and Legend. Vampires and Vampirism was originally published as Vampire, His Kith and Kin, and the Vampire and Lore and Legend was originally published as The Vampire in Europe. So just know that those books do go by different titles if you're looking for them and having a hard time finding them. But I think you can even probably get them online as free digital to read them online if you wanted to. And then if you want a Dracula retelling, I really like this one. This is Dracula My Love by Siri James. And I've read this novel probably 3 or 4 times over the years. I really enjoy it. I first read this, oh my gosh, probably at least 15 years ago now, and truly enjoyed it. And so I've read it a few times since. It's very much taking the like romantic love story approach, and it's rewriting it from Mina's perspective. So you get Mina's full perspective, and it really fleshes out her character in ways that Stoker himself didn't. And I love it. I think it's really, really good. There's also some excellent Dracula's Bride retellings. So yeah, pick where you want to go with that. I do love some of the Dracula's Bride retellings, but those ones, some are way better than others. So just, I would say, like, look up reviews before you pick one. Then clearly you can also go the Anne Rice route. I just have my copy of the DVD of the original Interview with the Vampire movie here with me right now. I actually do have my collection of the first 3 novels over there, but stuff's gonna fall if I grab it because I have stuff in front of it. So I'm just gonna hold up the DVD. Excellent. I really enjoy this movie. I really enjoy the series. I have lots of thoughts on how they've altered things and altered the timeline, but for the most part, really well done. I like the changes they've made for the most part. Some of them I'm like, but why? But why? Mostly, I'm not going to get deep into it, but I will say I don't like the way they portrayed the relationship between Louis and Armand. I much prefer Louis and Armand in the books and this film, because I think they romanticized it a bit too much in the show. But I've always been a Louis and Lestat girl, so that might be why. But the performances are incredible in that series. I do love all the actors. They are amazing. And yes, that Lestat is my favorite Lestat of all time. So, but yeah, iconic. And this one, I've always said, watch for Kirsten Dunst's performance. The fact that as a child she gave that performance is mind-boggling to me. And Claudia is always a character that I felt very, very empathetic towards, even though, yes, she does terrible things, but she's this child who can literally never grow up. She cannot become a woman she was meant to become, and it makes me feel for her. And I cannot imagine being trapped in a child's body, but having all of the intellect and the urges of an adult female. That has to be, it's disgusting to think of, you know? So yeah, what Louis and Lestat did in her becoming a vampire, which is mitigated with each retelling because they keep aging Claudia up. So you don't get the full impact of she was a young child when she was turned. She will never be an adult woman. She will never be viewed as an adult. She will never be able to have a romantic relationship or do any of these things. It's very, very much being trapped. She's caged and trapped, and yeah, she's gonna act out. So then my husband is currently borrowing my copy of Carmilla, so this is another way of recommending Carmilla. This is The Vampire Lovers, which is one of my favorite Hammer horror films of all time. It's the first film in the Karnstein trilogy, and yes, it is an adaptation of Carmilla. Pretty straight adaptation. There's Ingrid Pitt as Carmilla, and I love her. She's a great Hammer horror actress, although I like her in other British films that aren't Hammer horror as well. But yeah, it's so fun. It is so fun, so over the top, so campy. And yes, it is a sexed up version of Carmilla, but the undertones were already there in the original novel. I actually have a really old video on Carmilla where I break down a lot of that if you're interested. So yeah, such a fun movie. And then if you want funny, one of my favorite vampire comedies to recommend, because I think most people have never even heard of it, and it is Bitten from 2008, I think it came out. Oh, 2007. DVD was released in 2010, so apparently I've had this since 2010. But love this. It's a Canadian produced film. It stars Jason Mewes, and it's so funny. It's about this paramedic who brings home this young woman who he thinks is someone who had just OD'd. Turns out, not so much. And things just get completely chaotic from there. It is very heavy on the comedy, but it's also very bloody and violent. So it's very vampire, very like horror comedy. It's a great mix. It's fun. If you like horror comedies, I recommend this one. It's fun. Yeah, so that was all the media I wanted to talk about and explain. But back to the archetype and how can you embrace this? Well, you can do this by, again, reading, getting to know vampires in lore and in media and literature, and seeing where you could be inspired and where you can take the attitude of a vampire, the energy that they hold, and apply it in a more positive context to your life. Like setting those firm boundaries. That is the thing that keeps coming to my mind whenever I'm thinking about this, of keeping firm boundaries and having that boost of confidence, that protective energy. So maybe you're going to try and embrace this archetype when you're doing some sort of ritual surrounding boundaries and protection. Absolutely. You can, focus on a card that might have those energies as well, because I work with tarot heavily. So the queens, especially Queen of Swords, very great for boundaries. And just kind of pull where you can be inspired. And maybe it's in dressing. Maybe you dress a little bit more vampiric for the autumnal season. That's a powerful thing. Maybe your Halloween costume is literally a vampire. Whatever you want to have that protective cloak around you. Archetypal work is what we make of it. So it can be literally meditating and trying to embody this archetype in magic, but it can also just be doing more simple things like dressing, like the way we're decorating our homes, or being emboldened and inspired by famous examples of this type of archetype. And maybe there's a certain quote that you really love from vampire media, and maybe you use that to inspire something. Maybe you create art with that quote in it. Whatever you do, just to embrace that vampire energy a little bit more. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this kind of fun video, weaving together both archetypes and media to have a very vampire autumn. I will also link a couple of my recent blog posts down below. I have one with even more vampire media recommendations. That one's also just called A Very Vampire Autumn. I'll link it down, and there's so many because I've recommended books, movies, television, and I forget how many recommendations. But I know some categories have like 10 to 13 recommendations. So there's a lot in that if you want specific recommendations. And I'll also link my most recent Femme Fatale Friday post, because I was analyzing the female vampire and how she has been interpreted with female sexuality over the course of centuries. So everything from Carmilla to way more modern stuff. And yeah, I'll link that for you as well if you want to have some more vampire goodness in your life this autumn. And I hope you've enjoyed. I will see you in the next video, and have a wonderful week. Bye now.